never seen this in a hotel before. If I turn my camera around now, check this out. Disco bath! What is that? I have never had a bath that has done that before. And I'm trying to work it out because it doesn't look like it would actually be that relaxing. I think it would actually do my head in being in that bath. But anyway, I feel I should try it at least, you know, because many times you get to stay in a hotel where there's a disco bath. Or maybe that's not the purpose of it, perhaps it's not for discoing, but I think it's for discoing. But anyway, there's a lovely room. This is my room in Northern Ireland. Look at this bed, and I've even got my, I've got my num-nums here. This is from my daughter. Whenever I go away to work, she likes me to take some of her toys so that they come along with me. So I've got my num-nums with me. And, but anyway, I shall stop waffling about this crazy hotel room because actually there's a purpose. And the purpose is that yesterday I shared an article which was about how our brains are actually wired for unhappiness, not happiness. One of the things that they suggested was that you could spend time trying to rewire your brain for more happiness, to find the positives effectively. Now, of course, this is something that I've spent my whole career doing because there's no way I would have got across the Atlantic in that tiny little rowing boat all on my own for 3.5 months had I not found ways constantly to find the positives. So I'm a big believer that this can be done, and I wouldn't have achieved that challenge of rowing solo across the Atlantic without it. But in this article, what it suggests is that you could make a start by just trying to find, spend 1 minute 3 times a day thinking through the positives, and do that for 45 days in a row. Now, this got me thinking. It's been bothering me a bit for about 24 hours because I realised that I do that a lot more than 3 times a day, and I think we have an opportunity to do it an awful lot more than 3 times a day because I think we have to find the positives constantly. And I have a little term for them. I call them my tiny victories. And I have a day full of tiny victories. There's been loads that have happened today. I'll tell you a few of them. I travelled to Bristol Airport, and for once there were no roadworks near Bristol, so I didn't get stuck and I made it to the airport on time. Yes, tiny mental fist pump. Every time something like that happens and I get there, I think, yeah, I'm here on time, I'm going to make my plane. Tiny victory. And I think we have to kind of mentally just take a moment to celebrate those tiny victories. They're really important. I got here to Northern Ireland. I flew into Belfast International, and unfortunately I left my laptop bag in the terminal and went to meet the lovely lady who came and picked me up from the Henderson Group, and realised just as I was getting into the car that I had left my laptop bag. So I raced back into the terminal and it was still there! Another tiny victory! Now, I could have really berated myself at that moment. Deborah, you're such an idiot! You know, it would have been really easy to have gone to the negatives in that moment, to think, you know, what if your laptop had been stolen your whole life? Your 3 companies are run through that laptop. If you'd lost that, that would have been a nightmare. But instead I didn't. I chose to see it as a tiny victory, that it was still there. I remembered before we'd driven off, and then I went back and collected it. It's a tiny victory. Oh, I love that. Somebody's put a little tiny fist pump. Yes, mental fist pumps. So I think we need to be much more aware when we can celebrate these tiny victories, and that we need to constantly be looking for them throughout the day. And the good thing about an exercise like this is that it's very easy to make it a habit. You know, once you find yourself trying to get more and more of these tiny victories into your head, you start looking for them more. It's a bit inside your brain, reticular activating system, and it's a tiny little filter inside your brain, and it tells you, it tells your brain the things that are important to you to see. And we have complete control over this. We get to train that little bit of our brain to see the positives. So an example would be, if someone says to you, I'm going to buy a yellow car, and you think, what idiot, you know, nobody buys yellow cars. But then you'll notice when you go out onto the streets for the next few days, everywhere you look, you'll see loads of yellow cars. And that's because you've brought it into your conscious brain, into that reticular activating system. And you've told it, this is something in my conscious that I'm interested to see. So when we start to do that with the positives or the tiny victories, we see more and more of them. So it's just a case of starting to try to find these tiny victories and then doing some little mental fist pumps. Yes, I did it, or I've done it, or it's been good. Then we start to see more and more of them. So it's not a difficult concept. As with most of this stuff, it's really not rocket science. But it is possible to have a huge impact by doing that. Because it's not just you it impacts. And it does. I genuinely believe it makes me happier. But just think about the ripple effect of that outwards. What that does for your immediate family and friends. What that does for your colleagues. You know, nobody likes to be around a miserable git. But when we can start to see the positives, we become a much more pleasurable person to be around. We become more motivated in everything. At the moment, the world's a pretty weird place to be, isn't it? Like, there's some stuff out there that you turn the news on and you think, is this really happening? But we could choose to focus on that, and I think that would be a tragic thing to do. Or we can start to see the tiny victories a little bit more. And then maybe we can handle those crazy things that are going on in the world in a slightly more constructive way, because we're coming at it with a much more positive attitude.